The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television. Meet the Candidates is brought to you by Pioneer Public Television. The next hour is intended to encourage debate and inform you, the viewer, about the candidates running for office so that you can make an informed decision on Election Day. Participate in the process by sending in your questions now. The candidates for House District 12A are Jay McNamer of Elbow Lake and Jeff Backer of Browns Valley.
Welcome to Meet the Candidates, brought to you by Pioneer Public Television. My name is Amy Dahl-Wallers, and I am the moderator for this program. The purpose of this program is to give you an opportunity to meet the various candidates running for state offices. Tonight's candidates are running for a seat in House District 12A, and in a moment we will take a look at that map to see if that is your voting district. But first, let's meet the candidates. Running as the Democratic candidate, we have Jay McNamer from Elbow Lake. Welcome, Jay. And running as the Republican candidate, we have Jeff Backer from Browns Valley. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
Now let's take a look at the map of the House District 12A so you can see if this is your district.
Minnesota House District 12A includes all of Wilkin, Traverse, Big Stone, Grant, and Stevens counties, and the western parts of Douglas and Pope counties. Major cities include Morris, Ortonville, and Breckenridge.
If this is your district, I encourage you to prepare your questions to send in just a moment. But first, we're going to give the candidates an opportunity to provide opening remarks. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for opening remarks, and then we will take a short break to take your calls. So now with the opening remarks and leading off this evening is Jay McNamer. Jay?
Thank you, Amy. And I'd like to thank Pioneer Public Television for inviting us here tonight. It's my pleasure to be here. You know, my name is Jay McNamer, and I'm seeking the District 12A House of Representatives seat. I was born and raised in Ada, Minnesota, and have lived my entire life in western Minnesota. My wife, Robin, and I moved to Elbow Lake in 1971, where we both taught school, and we raised 2 daughters that both graduated from West Central Area High School in Barrett, Minnesota. I coached and taught in Elbow Lake and West Central Area school systems for 36 years. I also was a member of the Elbow Lake Fire Department for 20 years and an EMT at Prairie Ridge Hospital for 34 years. After I retired from teaching, I was elected mayor of Elbow Lake for 4 years and then ran and was elected to the Minnesota House of Representatives. I currently am a member of the Prairie Ridge Hospital Board, and I sit on the Elbow Lake Airport Board. I am seeking the District 12A House of Representatives seat to ensure that Minnesota's school systems are properly funded and maintained at all levels. Minnesota has one of the best school systems in the nation, and according to our former state economist, one of the main reasons Minnesota recovered faster than any other state from the past recession was due to our excellent educational system. We need to keep our schools strong to ensure our children and state have the best chances of having a successful future. I'm also running to help restore funding back to our cities, counties, and townships that was taken away during the past recession. Our local governments are struggling to make ends meet and have been forced to raise taxes to balance their budgets. We need to at least restore funding back to our local governments to the 2002 level, which is still 14 years behind what it should be. Local government aid allows greater Minnesota communities to have police protection, fire protection, libraries, public parks, and other necessities, which makes living in rural Minnesota a great experience. The past 2 years, Minnesota's legislature has been a disappointment to me because of partisan politics on both sides have prevented legislation from being passed that would have been beneficial to all Minnesotans. I'm running to bring cooperation and commitment back to our state.
Thank you, Jay. Now we will hear the opening remarks from Jeff Backer. Jeff?
Hi, I'm Jeff Backer, and first of all, I want to thank Pioneer TV for allowing us to debate here tonight and talk about the issues. Thank our moderator, Ms. Dow, my opponent Jay for being here today. And you know, I'd like to also reach out and thank my family, my lovely wife and my wonderful daughter, and my 5 great nieces and nephews, my parents, and then my twin brother. If it wasn't for them, I would not be able to serve as your representative. And the last 2 years, I have appreciated serving as your state representative. I lived in 12A all my life. I'm from Browns Valley. Currently, I also have served 23 years as a volunteer EMT for a community, served as a Lions Club member. Along with that, I also have been an elder in our church, so I understand rural values. One of the things that I share with people, you know, when I went to the Capitol 2 years ago, one of my major goal was to increase funding for our seniors, and we made a generational change with that, something that we worked across the aisles to get accomplished. I'm also your pro-life, your Second Amendment candidates was just received an A rating from the NRA, support traditional values. One of the other things that we worked really strong for is, in the last 2 years, was education. We put more money into the formula for our community schools, our rural schools in Greater Minnesota than we've seen in the last 10 years. That was something that we campaigned on, our Greater Minnesota representatives. We also were able to help our veterans. Veterans in Minnesota used to be taxed on their benefits, and I felt that was wrong, and a number of people have for years. We were one of the 5 states that did tax benefits for our veterans, but prior to this year, we passed out of the House, Senate agreed, Governor signed it. We no longer are one of the 5 states that tax good men and women who have served our country and protected us. The committees that I currently serve on is Agriculture Committee, chaired by Paul Anderson from Starbuck. I also serve on Health and Human Policy and Health and Human Service Finance. And along with that, I appreciate again for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. If you would like to send in your questions, you can do so now. Please be aware that we will give preference to questions that are directed at both candidates over questions that are only directed at a single candidate. You can submit your questions by calling 1-800-726-3178, or you can email your questions to yourtv@pioneer.org. And we will take a short break now and listen to a message from Pioneer Public Television while we take some time to take your questions. Thank you.
We'll be right back after the short break. Send in your questions now.
We believe in the excitement of exploration, that life offers each of us adventures that are ours for the taking. We believe that experience is life's best teacher, that unexpected discoveries can enrich and renew us. We believe that children are born explorers who need trusted guides on their journeys of discovery. We believe in challenging assumptions, that important questions deserve to be explored deeply, fairly, and honestly. We believe in innovation, that we must continue to break new ground and encourage new ideas. And we believe that who you are and where you come from should never stand in the way of what you want to be. This is who we are. This is what we believe. This is PBS.
At a time like this, we are called on to be reasoned, to listen, and to cut through the noise so that people can understand what's really at stake in this election.
We have a pretty good relationship with our audience in that they're the kind of intelligent group of people that can say, okay, this isn't exactly how I think, but I'm better for hearing this point of view.
What you get on PBS, what you get on Frontline is in-depth, long-form coverage that you don't get anywhere else.
We have a unique opportunity to have in-depth conversation, not just with candidates, but with advisors, with experts, with people who understand and know how to assess the political process.
If we can understand what voters want to know and then distill that into coverage that people can count on, then we're doing our job.
News and public affairs is still at the heart of our mission, and PBS is the place to come for that.
What makes a good Frontline story is really the ability to go to the heart of a difficult issue, to tell it with some intelligence and complexity, to do what most of television doesn't do. Frontline and public television is one of the last places doing this kind of work. We've been doing this job for 25 years, and people have come to trust us because we answer to no one but you.
Welcome back to Meet the Candidates. And now for the question and answer portion of the program.
Welcome back, and thank you to our viewers who have called in with their questions. You are encouraged to continue to call in questions. We do have quite a few, but we're going to try and get through as many as we can. The first question will go first to Jeff. Jeff, healthcare costs are way out of control. What would or will you do to ease the burden on our Minnesota families?
Good question. You know, MNsure has been a disaster. 2 years ago we were at this debate, and one of the things that my opponent shared during that debate is, I tell you what, MNsure has been a good deal, quote unquote. It was on September 26th. And it has not been a good deal. Blue Cross Blue Shield just pulled out of the individual plan. We need to, first of all, we have wasted $408 million on MNsure. We need to pull out, go on the federal exchange. We also need to do what us business owners understand. I'm a business owner, I own a business. Competition is good. We can go and purchase car insurance across state line. We need to be able to do with health insurance. We also need to eliminate the tax on insurance. That would save in a 2-year period roughly $22 billion for individuals with premiums and so forth. Along with that, we also need to look at malpractice reform to help save money. But we know one thing is that prior to the disaster that we had with MNsure, because tomorrow we're going, most likely what we're hearing, see rate increase anywhere from 40 to 60% on the individual market, which is just crazy. But we also need to, Minnesota was a leader with our MNcare system, and we also had a program to help individuals who had disabilities, had health issues that was non-insurable. So we were really a beacon in the country. We need to look to go back to that program. We also need to bring in more competition, less rules, less regulation, because we know what? A single pay system does not work. Competition is what works. That's what allows us to provide good health insurance, and that's what Minnesota had before.
Thank you. Jay, healthcare costs are way out of control. What would or will you do to ease the burden on Minnesota families?
First of all, let me talk about MNsure. MNsure is a place on our web where we can purchase insurance. And there's 5 different insurance plans on there, and you can purchase it there, or you can buy it at any other place you want. It's also a place where you can get help with low incomes, such as medical assistance or Minnesota Care, but it does not increase the cost of health care. It's just a place to buy insurance. What increases the cost of health care are our insurance companies. Our insurance companies are raising the rates 33 to 66%, and that's not acceptable. Instead of pointing fingers and blaming people for what's going on, what we need to do is sit down, work together, and find solutions to help stop this out-of-control healthcare spiraling expenses. We got to work together. We can't blame and just shout and complain about stuff. It's working together which gets things done. And it's not MNsure. MNsure is just a place to buy insurance. And we receive funding from the federal government to set it up. I believe we all deserve affordable health care. And if we don't work together to help one another, if we don't work together to solve a broken system, we're going to be stuck with these high-cost insurance all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff, would you like a rebuttal?
Yeah, this is where my opponent is 100% incorrect. MNsure is what caused the problem, because when government went into it, government created rules and policies that made it difficult for the private market to do what they were doing before, and that was successful. You know, when you have a market-based system that's no longer market-based, and when you have healthy people who aren't paying into the system, you're going to have increase in costs. It's simple. That's why, you know, you need someone that has to have good, practical, common sense dealing with markets, dealing with people, because that statement that MNsure is only a website, it's not. You know, Blue Cross is no longer providing individual care. UCare, which was a public program, is now pulling away. MNsure is really a disaster.
Thank you. Jay, would you like a rebuttal?
I would. You know, we provided 5 different companies to purchase insurance from, and you can purchase insurance from anybody else. That's called free enterprise. That's allowing competition for a market. And you know what? That's what our system is based on. And that's what MNsure was based on. It's not what's causing health insurance rates to go up. It's the individual companies. And you know what? Instead of complaining about it, let's work to find a solution to cure it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jay, the next question is for you. Could you name 2 places to cut unnecessary state spending?
Well, thank you for the question. There could be all kinds of places that cut unnecessary state spending. One thing that we should look at is we should look at funding for, you know, you got me. I'm hurting right now on this one. So let me think a second here. Unnecessary state spending right now, I can't think of any place that's really unnecessary. Maybe my opponent can. I do know we need spending for our schools, we need spending for our social services, our cities, our governments, but right now, I can't think of any place to cut spending.
All right, Jeff, can you name 2 places to cut unnecessary state spending?
Well, yes. Number one, we need to stop wasting money on MNsure. We've dumped $408 million into our broken state exchange. We've seen increase in costs. Minnesota, I'm a solution mind person. Minnesota had a good product. We went from a good product to a horrible product. And I'm hearing this at the door. The number one thing that I'm hearing at the door is making health care affordable. It's always easy to blame someone like the insurance companies or anybody else. I'm not blaming. I'm saying we know what the problem is. It's MNsure. So that's $408 million here. Hold our governor accountable for pay raises and payouts to commissioners. That's total nearly $1 million in the past year. And also, you know, we went through an audit with DHS, which is the Department of Health and Services. More than $200 million a year, this is a third-party audit, could be saved with the waste that we're seeing in DHS. So those are just 3 of the areas that we can save money for our taxpayers, because I understand it's your money. We have to use it wisely. We cannot be wasting it on MNsure and other government programs like that. We need to be smart with your money.
Again, instead of complaining about MNsure all the time, why don't we sit down and find a solution to our health care problems?
Yeah, it's really simple. Get rid of MNsure and go back to our system that worked before. That's how we can solve that problem. We have the solution. That's what we're working for.
All right, very good. Our next question, Jeff, will start with you. We are seeing more and more political advertising done by PACs and lobby groups. What can you propose that would limit the influence of big money in politics so our elected officials represent us, their constituents, and not the big donors and lobbyists?
On a state level, I really believe, this is my opinion, and you can accept it or reject it as you see fit, going door to door and being at the parades, showing up at the church dinners, going to the events is what makes the difference, that one-on-one contact. That is what's important. I'm not in a position to take away a person's right or a corporation's right for their First Amendment. Our founding fathers died for that right. We have men and women who serve in our country, which I admire. They put their life on the line for that amendment, just like the choice to worship the religion you want, and so forth. Those things are fundamental. What I have found that is so important on a state race is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you do that by getting out and talking to the people. Yesterday I was in Elbow Lake, just had a wonderful experience, finding out issues that were important, going door to door, and then I showed up at the Catholic Church dinner. Again, that's where you find, and that's what makes the difference, and that's why I believe door to door is so important. So I'm not going to restrict anything with a person's First Amendment or corporation.
Thank you, Jay. We are seeing more and more political advertising done by PACs and lobby groups. What can you propose that would limit the influence of big money in politics so our elected officials represent us, their constituents, and not the big donors and lobbyists?
That's very good. The question is, we should limit the amount of money that's spent by a candidate can only be raised in their district. That would keep outside sources from dumping huge amounts of money into our campaigns. It would also make things fair for both of us, which is if you can't raise money in your own district to support your campaign, you probably shouldn't be running. Outside money gives an unfair advantage to some candidates, and that's just not right. Local donations, local funds should be the only way that our campaigns are financed. I don't know if anyone's ever thought of that before, but that would be the proper way.
Jeff, would you like a rebuttal?
I agree with Jay. You know, 2 years ago, 80% of the money that I raised was from the district, where 80% of Jay's money was raised from out-of-state groups and so forth. This year, that's the same thing. Most of my money has been raised in the district. So it's interesting to say here that my opponent says that, but if you look at the campaign report, that's not the case. I agree. We need to listen locally. That's why I work locally. That's why I've supported locally and so forth. So I just find it kind of interesting where most of Jay's money was last year, 2 years ago, was outside, where mine was not.
We need a fact check on that. I did not get 80% of my money from outside the district. Almost all of my money came from within the district. I do have children that live in New York, and I have children that live in Las Vegas. They donated to my campaign. That's some of my outside money. But you better get your facts straight. It doesn't happen. 80% of my money basically came from my district, such as yours.
We'll have to do a fact check then.
Thank you. Jay, the next question is directed at you, and I actually have two questions, both somewhat relating to the Soil and Water Conservation District efforts to implement the buffer law bill that was passed in 2015. So starting with you, Jay, do you agree with the idea that vegetated buffers along streams, lakes, and wetlands are one effective way to keep our state's water bodies clean?
To help improve water quality, yeah, buffer zones do. And I remember when Governor Dayton first came out with his buffer zone proposal, and I was against it, and most farmers were against it, which was a one-size-fit-all rule. It was wrong. And then there were some changes, and in special session in 2015, Governor Dayton and the Republicans behind closed doors sat down and came up with the law that now governs our buffer zones. I was disappointed in that. That buffer zone law should have been brought out and put in committee where us landowners, ag landowners, and farmers could have some input in how it's done. Yeah, it does help filter out nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphates. But the thing that I was really pleased with is that they have the soil and water conservation districts take control of it. I trust them. I work with a gentleman by the name of Joe Montoni who teaches classes on water quality. He's the best guy I know. I trust the soil and water conservation districts.
Thank you. Jeff, do you agree with the idea that vegetated buffers along streams, lakes, and wetlands are one effective way to keep our state's water bodies clean?
I believe, first of all, that stewards, farmers are our best stewards of our land. And one of the things, if it was not for the GOP House, we would right now have a 50-foot buffer strip on private, public, everything. I saw that ugly bill that was introduced by Governor Dayton. That's one of the things that we need down at the Capitol, and that's what I've been able to do is provide common sense, practical experience. We fought off this one-size-all that fits buffer strips. And we also put into the practice, if it wasn't for us House members at the GOP, we would have a DNR cop, we would have, or a Bowser cop, we would also have a $10,000 fine. I mean, what Governor Dayton does not understand is that our farmers have invested interests. You know, we're talking about buffer strips in rural Minnesota. Where is this idea of buffer strips in the metro area with the, you know, you could go that. That's how crazy we work with some of these environmentals down in St. Paul. So if it wasn't for us GOP, myself, Representative Tim Miller, Representative Newberger, and some other individuals, we would have a very ugly bill. We were able to fight that off for our landowners. We represented our landowners, so because that's our way of life, and we were able to fight off and bring back to common law. And I agree. Mark Dayton has this idea, our governor has this idea, we wait till the last minute, throw this stuff down, and ram it through. It went to committee in the House, didn't pass, didn't get no traction in the Senate, vented it, and then Dayton, our governor, tried to shove it down our throats. And if it wasn't for the House members, we would have a very ugly buffer bill that does not do what we need to do, and that's protect our water quality.
Jay, would you like a rebuttal?
Yeah, and talking about the bill, it would have been right for farmers and ag loan owners like myself to have some input, at least listen to what we have to say. There's one thing else also. We're putting the burden of water quality just on our ag committee, on our ag community. If we're going to have good water quality, everyone needs to work with it. Cities, industries, businesses, we all got to work to keep our water in good shape.
I hope the governor gets that message. That's exactly what we were saying. It was the DFL, the very left of the environmentalists that tried to shove this down through Dayton's administration. The Farm Bureau, Farm Union, corn growers, soybeans, at the last minute worked with us in the House to stop this ugly bill. We need some common sense, and unfortunately that's one of the greatest assets that we're currently missing. That's why we need us rural members with common sense to continue to fight for landowners. We've done it before, we're going to continue to do it, bring everybody together. We started that venting process in ag policy. I serve on that committee, didn't pass, but then again, last minute, Governor Dayton tries to come and be a dictator and jam this through.
All right, gentlemen, now there was a second question also relating to the Soil and Water Conservation District, and that we'll start with you, Jeff. What would you do to support soil and water conservation districts or the DNR with daily efforts to work with individuals on projects that help keep the state's water bodies clean?
With the soil, first of all, we need local control. Our Soil Water Conservation District, I've met with all our one-on-one with some of the board members, several of the board members or the staff. We have good Soil Water Conservation District board members and members in 12A. They do a wonderful job, and they do a wonderful job because they work hand in hand with the landowners. We do not need the DNR in this at all. This one-size-all-fit type of approach that we see from a state level, St. Paul, doesn't work. What works is common sense, local control. And 2 weeks ago, I was talking to Holly Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago. Time goes fast, but about some of the projects that they're doing in Pope County. I know they're doing great projects in Big Stone County, Stevens, and others. So we really allow soil and water conservation districts do what they do best, work with the local farmers. Farmers, then it becomes more transparent because they're neighbors. That local control, and look at alternative practices. There is a lot of good ideas out there instead of a one-size-fit-all approach.
Thank you. Jeff, what would you do to support Soil and Water Conservation District, or DNR, with daily efforts to work with, I'm sorry, Jay, to work with individuals on projects. You don't have to answer it again, Jeff. To work with individuals on projects that help keep the state's water bodies clean.
Well, first of all, I'd like to see increased funding for our soil and water conservation districts. They've all of a sudden been burdened with a big task, and that's trying to help clean up our water, trying to help our farmers, trying to help our local communities. Now, one thing that I would suggest is that the soil and water conservation districts start putting on their classes to our local communities, not just the farmers alone. I've been in those classes. They teach us about how to conserve water, how to prevent water from running off, how to clean up our water, and that's absolutely necessary. You know, you might think about putting on a class in a community such as Appleton, and one thing that they push is rain gardens. You might say, one rain garden, which holds water back, allows it to percolate down into the aquifers, one rain garden wouldn't do much. But if everyone in Appleton had a rain garden, the amount of water that would be saved and cleaned would be enormous. If we did that with every community and every city, we would prevent, or we would help improve our water quality. And the other thing we have to take a look at is our cities themselves. For instance, Elbow Lake. We have 3 little water lakes that surround our town. We used to take our plowed snow in the winter and put it alongside those lakes. When it would melt, it would drain into our lakes. What does that plowed snow from the streets have? Salt. That does not help our water quality. So little things like that will help improve our water quality.
Thank you. All right, Jay, we've had several questions relating to transportation, and I think this one sums up the questions pretty good. So Jay, starting with you, do you support a gas tax increase for transportation funding? If so, how much of the gas tax, if any, should go to the Metro trains?
Well, right now, are you talking about the Southwest Light Rail?
I assume that's what they're talking about.
Right now, the Southwest Light Rail is going to be funded by themselves. 80% of that funding is going to come from the state, and they're going to impose a sales tax on their communities to take care of the rest. That shouldn't be a concern. What we need for transportation is we need a $600 million sustainable amount of money to take care of transportation. Yeah, gas tax is one way we can help sustain that, but it's not the only thing. We've got to look at license fees, we've got to look at possible sales tax. All of those things together will help fund transportation and help us get a sustainable $600 million a year. But if it's going to work, if we're going to be able to fund transportation, what we need to do is we have to have both parties working together and come up with a compromise. And I tell you what, bonding for transportation is not a solution.
Thank you. Jeff, do you support a gas tax increase for transportation funding? If so, how much of the gas tax, if any, should go to the Metro trains?
Well, first of all, I'll answer the question directly. No, I do not. Let's talk about one thing on the light rail. Light rail, most people do not understand that we as taxpayers here in 12A pay for 50% of the operation cost of any light rail. That comes out of state government. So to say that it's going to only be taxed based on a metro area, that is not correct. We as taxpayers have to do that, and we could talk long about that. In regards with the House, along working with the Senate, we came up with a comprehensive bonding tax, bonding transportation bill that would interject $700 million into transportation. And that's something that's very important. We needed to do that. Unfortunately, we had 7 Metro Democrats who ruined that for greater Minnesota. And what we were doing, a significant funding source, and I hear this outdoor knocking, people say it makes sense that we take the sales of our tires with automobile, truck tires, parts, cars, motorcycle. It makes sense that sales of those items, lease vehicles, taxes, goes towards roads and bridges, because that's what we're using it for. And so 2 years before this, we did not see a comprehensive plan in 2013, 2014. We took this difficult issue, came up with a comprehensive plan, passed it out of the House. We had agreement with the Senate. All the players involved, both sides, vented it through, agreed, and then we had 7 selfish Metro Democrats that ruined it for the rest of us. So we have a surplus. Let's use that money for our priority, and that's roads and bridges, instead of taking more money out of our pocket and sending it to St. Paul to be wasted.
Thank you. Jay, would you like a rebuttal?
Yeah, that's a short-sighted look at things. You know, if we are smart and realize that light rail prevents congestion down in the metropolitan area and helps take cars off the roads, which will mean there will be less need for new highway construction in the metro area. Highway construction in the metro area is extremely more expensive than highway construction out here. By preventing highways that have to be built in the metropolitan area, we can save money for more highway and road construction out here in rural Minnesota.
Thank you. Jeff, would you like rebuttal?
Yes. There we go again. That's not common sense. Most people do not realize if you hop on Big Lake, go down to Minneapolis, we as taxpayers subsidize that $22 one way. So if someone works in Minneapolis and we come back, that's so $22 to Minneapolis, $22 back. That's $44 a day. That's $900 a month. We as taxpayers could give them a Mercedes-Benz, lease a Mercedes-Benz, and put gas into their car. Plus, we're talking about $123 million a mile. We can take that and fund transportation in Metro and also in greater Minnesota much better. Plus, right now, we have the light rail. There's lawsuits right now that the federal money doesn't even want to come in because of those lawsuits. So we need to invest into roads and bridges. We did that as a House. We're going to continue to do it. We just take one step at a time. We've done it. We will continue to do it.
Thank you. Jeff, the next question is for you. What are your plans for filling teacher positions to alleviate the shortage in rural Minnesota?
You know, we started that this year and last year with softening the licensee. For example, I had teachers who would come to my office and they would say, you know, we have qualified teachers in other states that want to come, but then they have to go through all the testing and so forth. So we passed that. Along with that, we also, in education, so we reformed teachers' licensure. We also addressed issues in shortage of math, science, and special education because of that. Because it is very important. We have to continue. Minnesota has a wonderful tradition of education, and those are the common sense things that allow us to do that. Along with that, we increase funding, 2% each year, 2%. You know, they call that 2-2. That means 2% in 2015, 2% 2016. We did that. We put more money into education in the formula, which what that means. Because a lot of times you will hear, well, we put money into education. Well, they put them into category programs. What that means, it goes to the metro schools. We put it specifically in the formula, more money than we've seen in the last 10 years. So that allows our school districts to pay, offer the salaries that they need to also attract good people, good teachers, and then also with the reform that we saw with teachers' licensure. So we've done things, and we're going to continue to listen to our superintendents, our teachers, to even help further.
Thank you, Jeff. Jay, what are your plans for filling teacher positions to alleviate the shortage in rural Minnesota?
The shortage of teaching positions in Minnesota is a main concern for me. What happens is this: our educational system in Minnesota is outstanding, but it's outstanding because we have great classroom teachers. And why is there a shortage? And here's what happened. The cost of a college education has gotten so prohibitive that most kids are looking for employment where they can make more money. Kids are coming out of college today with an average of $31,000 in debt. But I've talked to college kids that have $40,000, $50,000, and $60,000 in debt. They're so far in debt that they can't buy a car, they can't buy a house, and sometimes they have to live at home with their parents. This is stifling our economy. Those are our future breadwinners. Those are the future ones that keep our economy going. What we need to do is reduce the cost of a college education, and we need to help students going into education with debt forgiveness. I got a plan. I think it's workable.
Thank you. Jay, do you have a plan to reduce the number of people on welfare and get them jobs? And if so, what is your plan?
You know, I don't have a plan to reduce the number of people on welfare. But I do know this. Most people that are on welfare don't want to be there. They want to have jobs. They want to work. They want to be a contributor to our economy. You know, we can't have job programs that will hire people. I know our Humane Society has people that comes out that are employed by the state until they can find decent work. You know, we got to help our job services. We got to help people find jobs. We got to help education to help train people. I know there's a lot of jobs that are needed, and we don't have enough people to fill them. And a lot of the jobs require skills, and we need to send people back to school to get training to fill those jobs that are needed. You know, it's a complicated process, but just because you're receiving welfare now doesn't mean you're going to be there forever, and most of those people that are on welfare would rather have a job.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have a plan to reduce the number of people on welfare and get them jobs? And if so, what is your plan?
Yeah, good question. In regards with, first of all, we need to let businesses do what they do well, and that's employ people. We have too many regulations that makes it difficult. Government is not the answer here. I have visit with people at the door, and I have visit with business owners. You work roughly 29 hours, and then people don't want to work because then they don't get their benefits. So we have to incentivize people to be workers instead of work off the system. I agree. People work. It is important for people to work. You feel good when you accomplish it. But our system right now is not set up to reward people to work. We are really set up. You work so many hours and you can get these type of benefits from the government. That is not right. That is not what our founding fathers set up our country to be. I believe in a safety net. Yes, we need safety nets because we all run into challenges. But when you have a system that does not reward, a government system that does not reward entrepreneurship, overburden regulations, it's difficult for businesses to hire people, number one. And number two, then, when you have a government program that rewards people to not work, then you're going to have shortage of labor. We need to really start looking at that more. That is a lot of a federal issue, but there's things that we can tweak here also in Minnesota.
Jay, would you like a rebuttal?
We do have a program that does help people that are not employed, and it's called SEP. And what this does is it teaches people how to work, how to get to work on time. It gives them training. It gets a chance for them to get recommendation, and it also gives them work experience. I've seen the SEP program work. I've seen people come out that have gone through the program and then get employed and be valuable employees. So there are programs set up to help people get off of welfare and get employed.
Thank you. Jeff, would you like a rebuttal?
Again, we have, government has made it so, and I'm not blaming the people who work for so many hours and then they, utilize the program. They're doing what they need to do to make a living and so forth. But when government sets those type of programs, to make it easier for people to not work as much as they want to work, we have to examine that and make it practical. You know, there's a person in Big Stone, he's not from the country, came in, he goes, in my country, he had a strong accent, if you don't work, you don't eat. And, you know, we need to allow individuals to do what they do best, and that's being productive. We want to help people to be productive. And when you have programs that artificially limit people, the amount that they work, I don't think it's not good for our country.
Thank you, gentlemen, and that actually brings us to the end of the question period. We got through quite a few, but we didn't get through the majority of them. We had I'm told by my director we do have time for one more. And so I will summarize this, and we had a couple of different questions on local government aid, and I will just summarize it and ask, what will you do to restore local government aid? And I believe, Jay, we start with you on this one.
I'm a big advocate for local government aid. Local government aid provides funds to all our local communities to help us have things that are necessary, such as fire protection, police protection, libraries, parks, without having to burden our communities with higher property taxes. You know, during the recession, local government aid was taken away from a lot of our communities. In 2013, when I was in the legislature, we restored local government aid for cities, counties, and townships. $80 million for cities, $40 million for counties, and $10 million for townships. It wasn't enough, but it was a beginning, and it helps to keep our property taxes down. We need to reinstate local government aid again, at least to 2002 levels, to help keep our property taxes down in our communities and help us maintain services that are essential for Greater Minnesota.
Thank you. Jeff, what will you do to help restore local government aid?
You know, in our tax bill, we put $22 million into local government aid. I was mayor of Browns Valley for 6 years. I understand the importance of local government aid in Greater Minnesota. That's one of the reasons we were able to do so much. Us majority makers, which were from Greater Minnesota, who switched the House from one party to the GOP, we worked hard. We wanted to get $45 million, but at the end, you know, we had to work across the aisle and come up with a reasonable solution, a compromise. And we worked hard. We wanted more because we understand that we have to get it back to the 2002 level and so forth. We also need to work on county aid for our counties because of the change of ag valuation and so forth. So you will not see a stronger opponent that will fight for rural values. That's what we do. What's good for rural Minnesota is good for Minneapolis. It's not the other way around. We have to fight for local government aid. We fought for raising money for our rural schools, and also we fought against the one-size-all buffer strip from our administration. So we will continue to do it. It makes sense, and thank you.
Jay, would you like a rebuttal?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. We asked for $45 million. You proposed to give $22 million. We had a $900 million surplus. You missed the boat. You missed the boat of helping to keep property taxes down and helping our local communities. But you know what, in the end, we got nothing because people could not get along.
You may have a rebuttal as
We
well.
missed the boat because of Governor Dayton. We had a tax bill that was supported by all the GOP on the House, all the DFL on the Senate. So we worked together. 89%, we had that bill passed, and then the governor vetoed it. I agree. The governor gave us nothing. You know, he said he was going to pass the tax bill. We worked very hard, bipartisan. That was the best bill that we ever seen for a tax bill. It gave money for working credit for our families. It also gave tax breaks for small business owners, which we need out here. I understand that. First $100,000 valuation of taxes, property tax, would have helped our small businesses. We also gave breaks for child care. Also, first in the nation, tax breaks for individual students graduating with debt. We did it. The governor failed us.
Thank you, and gentlemen, that brings us to the conclusion of the questions. We now move on to the closing remark section of the program, and each candidate is given 2 minutes to give a closing remark. We will start with Jeff Backer. Jeff?
Well, thank you. I was elected and first of all, it's been an honor to serve as your state representative. I've appreciated it. I have learned so much because you will not find anybody that will work harder for you. I respond to emails, phones. We did 26 parades this year. We're door knocking. And one of the things I was really proud of this year, we had priorities. Nursing homes. It was not done ever before. We took that issue, which was so important for our greater communities, and put generational change for our nursing homes to provide care for our seniors. Of course, it helps with our small communities because nursing homes are an economic engine for our area. We did that. We get a lot of talk from the other side saying we need more money for education. You know what? The GOP House did it. We put more money into our rural schools because we had with DFL control, we had such wide variation from metro students to greater Minnesota. We shrunk that. We put money into our facilities in greater Minnesota. We've never seen that before. Along with that, we also set priority for roads and bridges. Prior to 2014, in 2013, 2014, there was not a comprehensive plan. I like to say what they did those years for transportation was Pet Fest. We got out there and we played on the football field. We passed a bill with bipartisan support out of the House, and we had agreement with the Senate, and then we had the hiccup there. So we really worked extremely hard. I am your pro-life candidate. I also support the Second Amendment. Traditional values, I'm a strong supporter of our rural values. I have the experience we need to continue to stand up for rural values in St. Paul. And I've done it before because what's good for rural Minnesota is good for Minneapolis.
Thank you, Jeff. We will now hear the closing remarks from Jay McNamer. Jay?
Thank you, Amy, and I'd like to thank Pioneer Public Television for allowing us to be here tonight. You know, this past legislative session was a disappointment to me as a former state representative. I saw a 2-year session end without a tax bill, without a bonding bill, or without a transportation bill. No one can remember this ever happening in our state's history. When large, important legislation like this is not passed, it hurts our whole state economically. Critical infrastructure projects were not started. Needed tax breaks were not given. And our roads and our bridges continue to be in disrepair because of partisan politics, not willing to compromise and find common ground. This needs to end. I'm not going to point fingers and assess blame to anyone or any group of people. What I will tell you, what we need to do is this. We need to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, reset our priorities, and put this state back to work again. And you know what? I want to be part of that solution. We need to put our differences aside and work on common goals that will benefit all of Minnesota. Former President Reagan used a phrase that best fits what we need to do. And the phrase simply says this: it's amazing what can be accomplished when it doesn't matter who gets the credit. Let's put our differences aside and work for what's best for all Minnesotans. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And that brings us to the end of tonight's program. Tonight's program will be available online tomorrow on pioneer.org. Next week, we will not have a Meet the Candidate program, but the following week, October 13th, we will have 3 programs at 7, 8, and 9 featuring House District 16A, District 16B, and Senate District 16. On behalf of Pioneer Public Television, I'd like to thank the candidates for joining us this evening, and I'd like to thank the volunteers who've assisted with phone calls. But most importantly, I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in and listening to your candidates. Remember, your voice is important. Make sure your voice is heard by voting this fall. Thank you.
Meet the candidates. We hope you've gained